What is changing behavior?
Hi, Sean.
That's what
How are you? Good.
how do you create change? Give them a wallet. Hey, let's go, man. You're over there. You're over there.
I'm Jody. Kevin, nice to meet you. I can turn my
You're
Did you get it? You have it there. Okay. Otherwise, we can write it down here too.
Yeah.
On the pen.
I was like, I knew you were here, but I just didn't realize that.
It wasn't me. I'm okay being down the side. I'm always in the front row. I don't even in the front row. When you get in my eyesight, I'm just worried about the back. We're like, you're ready to get in, right?
What's that? Jody, right?
Yes, I was gonna say. You worked with us the bond.
I did. Nice to see you. Oh, let's see.
That's why I listen.
Thank you.
I just want to say this is a first. I've never had a committee like in and naturally become quiet like this ever. But I do work generally in education, right? So, but typically there's a lot more than this. So thank you guys for coming. I appreciate that a great deal. I just want to say just a few words to open. First of all, just express my appreciation that this community and you guys as representatives of it made it so easy to put this committee together. And I feel like there's a lot of strength in this community, even though it's been a little tattered here for the last decade or so. There is such a great willingness to take actions that will bring the school district to its fullest potential. And so thank you guys for that work, the willingness to do that work. The purpose of this committee is to bring the schools under the complete ownership of an informed community, right? That you guys are no longer on the side, you guys will be here and will have a primary role in determining some of the really important elements of the future of this district. There are about 70,000 people in this district. We got an update from Milliman's that they kind of look at our bond status. About 10,000 kids, about 60,000 adults. It incorporates Millersburg, Tangent, outside of town, and the city of Albany. 70,000 people. So we're gonna ask about 30 of you to become informed, to learn together, and to make our best effort to guide the district forward in terms of its facilities. So that's really important as we go forward. John F. Kennedy, who I love to quote, he was a speechwriter, but he said this: we must not despair, we must act. Let us not seek the Republican or the Democratic answer, let us seek the right answer. Let us not seek to blame for the past. Let us seek together to take our responsibility for the future. And so I'm asking that we will continue to think broadly here, that we will think in terms of the whole community and our best path forward to create a better future here. And it's not just about the kids. We want all of our kids to have a great future, but we also can't wish for a great future for kids and not think about some of our ownership in in our capital, in our buildings. And so I have 3 roles, right? Number 1, I'm a listener, I like to visit. I will, at any time, accept a meeting or a phone call if you have questions or wonderings after a meeting. Number 2, I am the attendance officer, right? Thank you for your commitment. You have to go into witness relocation for me to not track you down. I really believe it's so important that committees don't kind of winnow away. There's a lot to learn before we come to any conclusion. So I ask that you hold judgment. You're going to learn something tonight. You'll learn other things next month, other things the month after that. We will not make sausage until the winter. That was my second role. My third role is this, that whatever this committee is doing and thinking, that my job is also to make sure that the board is aware and is moving along the same lines. Because this, whatever we put together as a facility plan, must be a bill that passes both the House, which is us, and the Senate, which is the board, who would vote to accept that. We do have 2 board members sitting here with us tonight, and they will be members of the committee. Stephanie Lunsford, newly elected. Let's give her a hand. Sean Taylor. So again, thank you, and again, to turn it over to the community, to turn it over to you, to turn it over to your collective thinking is really what this is about. And we're going to have to work together, be smart, think, we'll learn together, and all of us are smarter than any one of us or half of us. And I just want you to remember that as we're going forward. I want to introduce right now from Sage Architects. Becca is our communications director. She will be taking pictures. She's not anybody that you guys need to be like, hey, Gardner, run her out of here or anything like that. Number 2, the bathroom for men is on the right as you leave. The bathroom for the women is on the left. If there is a name tag issue, if there is a misspelling, mark it on that. We'll correct that before the next meeting, and I think that there are a couple, and we apologize for that. We will certainly make that right as we move forward. From Sage Architects, Amy Voss.
Hi. Sure. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Amy Voss. I'm a principal at Sage Architecture. This is my partner, Jonah Jensen. He's also a principal at Sage. And this is Priya Uthman. She's a job captain in our company. And then this is Angela Crooks. She's a project manager with Sage Architecture. So we've all been working with the facilities team over the summer to kind of walk through all of your facilities, and so getting familiar with each and every building as we go through and prepare for our workshops. So thank you all for being here. This is a great turnout for the first workshop, so happy to have you. In your booklets, these are binders that you all get to keep, and you'll get information for every workshop that you get to put in those binders. You have a much more detailed schedule for this evening, so this is just a rough outline, so there's timing. We like to keep things moving and keep things on time so that you can get home to your families after 8 o'clock. It's kind of late, so we want to make sure that we move at a pretty swift pace, but allow everybody to have time to give proper feedback. So we will go through what long-range facility planning is. We'll do a group exercise to work through defining what some guiding principles might be for this team. We'll take a break, so we have 2.5 hours with everybody, so we will take a physical break. You can get up and walk around. There's a lot of snacks over there, and before we have our guest speakers from Piper Sandler over here, they're back there. Carol and Brendan will talk through about bond planning and the process there. So we will come back after their presentation. We'll have a large group discussion about what you've heard, answer any questions, and then we'll let you leave. Okay? So we've already introduced our team, so we'll go ahead and jump over. This is, as I mentioned, we've been working with our executive team throughout the summer, and Lauren and David have been really gracious and accompanying us on all of our tours, so it's been really helpful. We've done a lot of good staff interviews and administration interviews as well, and this is our team with Sage. So our company, we've been around for 2 years. July 2023 is when we started. We've got 19 employees. We've got, this is the majority of them we've actually added since this picture was taken this past summer. But we've got 2 offices, one in Portland and one in Bend. And we've got the majority of our work is K-12. Actually a little bit more than 60 to 70% of our fees are through K-12. We've got a lot of really experienced people. We're a young firm, but I've got 27 years and Jonah's got 24 years in K-12 design. So we bring a lot of experience to the team. This is just a little graphic. We're currently working with over 20 different districts throughout the state of Oregon and some in Washington as well. And then this is just some of our collective experience between Jonah and myself and Angela on some of our previous bond work. And yes, I did work on the bond work with my previous firm, so some of you may recognize me, so I'm very glad to be back. Rules of engagement.
So just so that we're all on the same page, we just want to remind everybody, generally this is a committee and we want to be productive here. So just a few, things that we want to keep in mind. Obviously meetings start on time. We start on time, that means you get out on time, right? So everybody wants that. Please be respectful of others' ideas, opinions, and questions. Remember, we're here to brainstorm, we're here to figure this out, so let's be inclusive of other people's thoughts and be respectful in that way. Be engaged and actively participate. So you are invited here to participate and to give your feedback, so please speak up, feel free to speak. Be a good listener. I think this goes along the lines of being respectful in a committee, and there are no bad ideas. We do it all the time. We're like, hey, I know this is crazy, but let's just talk about this. So just throw it out there, because you never know. That's how things work. That's how things generate and roll. Be open-minded and think outside the box. Once again, like I said, just throw something out there. Do you think it's crazy? It might stick. It might have some value in there. Keep the needs of students first. I think this is probably why we're all here, to help your students and create a good learning environment. So. And then consensus decision making. So this is always a really hot topic, right? Because consensus doesn't mean that it's not unanimous. It just means like, okay, I see it, I understand it, let's move forward with that. We can agree that that's a good baseline, right? And then also remember, we are an advisory group. Final decisions are by the school board. I know Andy already kind of talked about that. So we're here to prepare stuff to give to the board. So you're not making a final decision. All right, so just to kind of get everybody going here, so we're gonna have an icebreaker. And you can share your responses with your group just to kind of get the conversation going. I know we all love icebreakers, it's not a game, I promise, don't worry. But, so the question is, if you had to listen to only one song for 30 days, what song would that be? And this is the only song you get to listen to. That's it. All right, we will give you, let's say 5 minutes. We'll start the clock. All right, please share.
You're up next.
Huh?
You're up next.
I like it.
I would pick Vivaldi. One of the seasons from Vivaldi, 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could listen to that. Something without words,
Yeah.
because words might
That's
get
the
a
good
little.
one. It's
Yeah.
gotta be without words, I think. And if you're gonna go through that whole, like, I've got a song and I want you to play it on repeat for weeks on end. So we get in the car and she goes, Daddy, can we play the song that goes dun 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 dun? Yes.
So we probably gave him like a couple minutes.
Every day, all day, or just once a day? What's that? The song.
Probably not all day, every day, but it's the only song you get to listen to.
Only song.
Yeah.
I'd be happy. That's true. So I work with seniors. So I got to be happy to come in.
Driving me nuts. It's better, but it's still not straight.
Do you want?
There you go. Let this thing go. Are you? All right.
Now you get to know your table mates a little bit more. So we're gonna pick up after the.
Yeah. I'm just curious though, really quick. Can I get one person to tell me the song? Anybody? Anybody? What's the one song that you'd listen to on repeat if you had to for 30 days? Hey, that was mine. Yep.
I really want to know Rod Stalich's song.
Oh.
Imagine by the Beatles.
Oh. That's a great one.
I thought it might be some big. That's a good one. That's awesome.
We had some better ones up here on this table.
It's not a competition. It's so funny because
Everything's the competition.
See, you didn't specify that it had to be like a song from an artist per se, so I figured I would find a YouTube song that was like 4 or 5 hours long of instrumental music.
oh, that's some good thinking right there.
Enough that I wouldn't have to like ignore or get mad at it after somebody.
Nor did you say it had to be by the same artist, so I said this is the song that I like, but with many different artists that sing it.
I like it. I like it. So what I'm hearing here is we need more rules around our activities. You know, this question is really near and dear to my heart because I got a little 7-year-old daughter, and she gets stuck on a song, and it is on repeat for weeks in the car. You know, you get in the car, Daddy, can you play the song? And goes dun 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 dun. Okay, I got to figure out what song it is, but so we ended up making her a playlist. But so. That's great. I'm glad that everybody got a chance to chat and talk a little bit. So we wanted to kind of bring folks up to speed on, you know, some of the things that are related to a long-range facility plan. How many folks in this room were part of the long-range facility advisory committee last time? So we got great representation here. Really good representation. How many folks have been part of a long-range facility advisory committee at another district? Yeah. So we got a lot of really seasoned veterans in the room. You know, I really liked how Andy framed it earlier. You know, the sausage making, that's going to be happening in the winter, but there is a lot of tool sharpening that happens in preparation for that sausage making. And there's a lot of components that go into a long-range facility plan. First and foremost, there are the ODE requirements. You know, understanding population projections, understanding, you know, how you've worked with the community at large, prioritization, a variety of different things. But to get to the prioritization, you need a lot of that upfront work to get there. You know, Carol and I think Brendan will talk a little bit more about it later, but the AWESOME grant, There's some really good opportunities for additional funding for any school bond that may happen in the future. You know, so the state does do a match. So we'll get a good understanding of that and what that looks like. But a well-developed plan really does take into account the facilities, both from a facility perspective, you know, does the heating work? Does the cooling work? You know, how are the windows and things like that? But also takes into consideration the educational adequacy of each space. And so we've done a lot of upfront work in preparation for this meeting. We've walked each facility with Lauren and David and kind of got a good handle on those facilities. We've interviewed every principal at every facility to get a good handle on just kind of the educational adequacy. You know, looking at things like lighting, looking at things like how is the program accommodated there. So there's a lot of components that go into a good, thoughtful, long-range facility plan. It reflects the district's needs for healthy enrollment and future growth. So again, that understanding those enrollment projections and capacity needs moving into the future, and it really is that roadmap. You know, I like to think of it as kind of a living document. You know, it's something that it's supplemental, it's added to, so being thoughtful about that in the future. There's a lot of steps into getting into a very thoughtful long-range facility plan. And we're kind of really between step 1 and 2. We're really getting into 2, but it is an iterative process. And so we're going to be doing a lot of work. We're going to be stress testing a lot of ideas. There are no dumb ideas, like Angela said. And we're going to see what really works. You know, what is the collective vision for Greater Albany Public Schools? What does that look like in 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And how do we create a long-range facility plan that's conducive to that? We're going to take all that really great information and develop concepts. We're gonna stress test them. We're gonna have an understanding of cost modeling associated with each and every one of those. That ends up going into a prioritization exercise, which is a really important component to a long-range facility plan that's ODE compliant, is understanding that prioritization. So that will happen later in the process. But you know, even though this says gather community feedback here, we're really kind of doing it along the continuum, right? Stakeholder engagement happens at every step of the way. So that sausage is being made together.
And this committee is part of that community feedback. So all of the information, gathering the people in this room, the whole point is to gather very different perspectives to be able to provide that whole 360 analysis of what your district is looking for.
Right. And to be great ambassadors, you know, for the process throughout. Our role as Sage Architecture, you know, we're here as facilitators. You know, we help guide the process, having that experience, working with districts throughout Oregon and Washington. So just kind of bringing that lens. But nobody knows the community better than folks in this room, you know. And so that is really our primary role, is to help facilitate and synthesize information and develop plans for each and every one of those schools. Mentioned before, we'll be providing cost opinions at each school. We do have an independent cost estimator that is supplemental to even the costs that we get from ODE, which, you know, those are kind of, we got to look at it as a whole package. That cost information will help us prioritize and look at that prioritization. And then ultimately there will be a final plan recommendation that goes before the board. And so having a couple board members at these committee meetings is really helpful, so that, you know, you can be apprised of the decisions being made in this room and advised upon. So that's kind of our roles. Committee roles and responsibilities. You know, as committees, again, you'll be ambassadors for the project. Really understanding the bond process and understanding what goes into the recommendation. Reviewing the financial data and setting a budget. So kind of just what, you know, when we look at prioritization, you know, how do those buckets align and how much money goes into each bucket? And again, we're talking long-range facility planning at the moment. Prioritizing the needs both district-wide and by school to meet a budget. You know, Andy had a really good point in the beginning. This is district-wide. So we've got a lot of facilities to look at, a lot of communities to look at. And creating some of that parity, you know, as much as we can there is, I think, going to be a high priority. And then, of course, this committee will recommend a package to the board for board approval. Amy, do you want to hit on that last note there?
One of the things that comes up when we talk about facility needs, sometimes we might talk about, do we have enough schools? Do we have too many schools? Is the boundary in the right place? We want to keep those kind of decisions up to the board. That's one of the reasons why we do have a couple of board members here, so that they can bring that communication back. And then if there is a discussion about, well, maybe we need to close a school or build a new one somewhere else, there'll be a subcommittee that Andy mentioned that the board will put together to discuss what that would mean. We just want to focus mostly on the prioritization of the needs and how to do a district-wide facility plan that we can work with the district, or the district can work with for the next 5 to 10 years. So so we can kind of take that off the table, so we can just focus on what the needs are that we present to the group. Okay? Is there any questions on that?
I guess why is that? Why is that subset? Why is that taken out of the decision? If that's a huge, that could be a huge part of the discussion of, does that make sense to consolidate or even add schools? Wouldn't that be a?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Absolutely, right? That's one of my primary roles. If those things begin to emerge, then I'll be working with the board in concurrence, right? So, the one thing you have to remember, Tim, is if we just go ahead and there's like, we may have to reconcile and just really work people through that. What we don't want is, hey, you need to close 5 schools before we do anything, and they're not ready for that. So that, we're gonna be listening for that and working on that. The board is here as well. Thank you.
Do you want to hit that one? Oh, there you go.
So, as Andy mentioned, attendance is really important. It's really nice to have that continuity of information. So if you miss any meetings, Andy and his team are happy to meet with you to go through what you might have missed to get everybody back up to speed for the next workshop. You also have your binders as well, so don't lose them. If you lose them, I think there's only a couple that are set to the side, but if you do lose them, contact Chris Green. And so these are the upcoming meetings to potentially catch people up who have not been able to make tonight's meeting.
Or if you're not able to attend the November meeting, those are the dates for November.
We'll work with you as well, right? We'll be flexible on
Yep.
getting it.
So the board roles and responsibilities, just to be clear, they are there to review the recommended plan. So we normally like to have a member of this committee present the recommendation to the board. And so the board will take that under consideration, and then they will take the next steps to either modify the plan, approve the plan, and then decide when they want to go out for a bond. So we're not required to go out for a bond in November. We're not required to go out for a bond at all. But this process is part of the required process to get the Awesome Grant if you pass a bond. So regardless, you need a plan. I think Andy and the board would like to have a 5-year plan, kind of a rolling clock, so that you revisit it every 5 years. As we've known over the last 5 years, a lot changes in 5 years. So that's the point of us mentioning that our plan that we come up with after our 6 workshops here will be a 5-year rolling plan. So this is our schedule. We are obviously in October, so the first July through September, we have been, like as we mentioned, working with the facilities team and trying to update the facilities plans. Recently, there was a facility assessment done through a third party from the Department of Education, and we went through all of the buildings to try to see how accurate those estimates were. Some things changed over the time that they've been reported on, so that's what our team is doing. So next meeting, we will present those plans or those reports on each of those facilities. And as Jonah mentioned, we also have been busy interviewing all of your district staff and your principals to kind of see what we don't see and what you guys know, just in living with the buildings. Is there anything else we need to add to those facility upgrades? So we meet every first Tuesday of the month, except for in January. Obviously, that's going to be right after the holidays. But also in December, that is going to be the meeting that we start talking about concepts. What might we put in a plan? And so our team will be working through those test fits, and those test fits will then be given to our cost estimator. So that's quite a bit of effort happening between December and January. So we'll present that work in our February meeting. And then this is just a potential schedule. These are the deadlines that are required to go out for a bond if you go out for a bond in May of 2027. So.
You said 27?
27. Yep. I know, it moves fast. We're almost to the end of 25. So one of the things we want to do today, this is our small group exercise, is coming up with some designing or guiding principles. So these are really going to be our bumper rails. So we're going to come up with probably between 5 to 7 different designing or guiding principles. And what those do is they're sort of we are statements, like our district is, our schools are, kind of a statement. So we'll go through some examples, but it should align with Greater Albany's strategic plan as well. And then they're kind of action oriented. So we are an amazing district because we provide our students with equitable learning facilities. And so they're sort of broadly phrased, so you don't kind of paint yourself into a corner, but you can still use them as guidelines to make decisions whether we go through the prioritization process of making sure you're still within those bumper rails. So this is the strategic plan and the values that your Building Bridges is all about. So equitable outcomes and systems for all education, systems for all students, social, emotional, and mental health support, and rigorous and engaging academics. So they're fairly all encompassing, so it's sort of something that you can't really disagree with, because we all want the best for our students. But just to make sure that when we come up with these guiding principles, that we kind of keep these things in mind.
And these are just some samples of guiding principles. Again, these are very broad, and these are just ones we've kind of seen in the past. The guiding principles here should reflect Greater Albany Public Schools. But, you know, this is when we talk about kind of how loose they are and how those are being used as filters, this is the level that we're talking about. So, you know, our schools might be something like the heart of the community by providing fully accessible community assets, as an example. Support our educators and promote connections with students through enhanced health and well-being services. Again, very, you know, pretty broad, but they are the sieve to which a lot of decisions are made. Flexible and adaptable learning spaces with activities relevant to real world and future modalities. It happens every time you tour facilities that are from the 60s, from the 70s, you know, from the 80s, even from 10 years ago. A program that was designed for a specific space, I can almost guarantee that that program may no longer be there or it's adapted. So being thoughtful about the future proofing of facilities, you know, I think that's a really good one. Providing equitable learning environments where all students feel welcome, safe, supported, and empowered. Again, very broad. And cost-effective and sustainable by maximizing our resources to maintain existing facilities. So again, these are just examples that we've seen in the past and in recent experience. And so what we want is to have an exercise where Greater Albany Public Schools has their own guiding principles that is really informed by the Building Bridges, the strategic plan, and being thoughtful about that. So we do have a small group exercise that we wanted to run through.
Yeah, so on your table is a larger Post-it pad. So each table will kind of work in their own table for a small group setting. And if we have, I think, 20 minutes assigned to this. Right? We have 30 minutes to go through this exercise. So we will walk around the room if you have any questions, but we will also keep the examples up there as well, unless you would like to see the you have a slide already of the building bridges in your pamphlet if you need to refer to that. But it would be good if each group comes up with at least 5 different ones, so each one will get put on a post-it. Don't put all 5 on one post-it, and then we'll have one person from each table come up and report out what you heard. So the point for us is to hear any commonalities that we might hear from the group, so we can eventually come to a consensus on at least 5 to 7 guiding principles for our next workshop. So we'll bring that final solution to the team next time. Any questions? Yeah.
What's the building bridges thing in?
Oh, this was the strategic plan that was.
We can leave it up.
Yeah, do you want to go back to?
It's hard to read.
You have building lifelong learners, respect individuals and community, instruct at the highest level, preparing students for life, design systems that represent all voices, grow social, emotional, and physical well-being, engage multiple perspectives, and strengthen relationships. Anyone have questions? Ready to dig in? Okay. So you've got a marker and a tablet.
Max
Right
is
now.
current. I would love to see us some other things go around.
All right, you want this?
Especially because currently our poorest students are.
Can I get some water? Is that my water? Was that my water?
I don't know. I think that was mine. But there's water over there.
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of long. We might shut it. Well,
I'd say maybe like 7.
7. We'll start checking in on people.
Yeah.
Because we had a half an hour, do you want to give them 20 minutes and then 10 minutes to report back? Maybe? Is that what we
I think we were gonna check in at 7 and then call, make it wrap up at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. We're a little ahead of schedule.
Okay.
Like every little space right now. Yeah, I know. Say roll number 4.
Few students in the last block, but not all.
Oh, I see.
Playgrounds in particular.
Right.
But there was a big push for safety, which is out of the last one, which is where all the schools bus to get checked in. Before that, everybody could just walk in the school. So there's a big piece on the safety. I think that's a critical issue.
So how do we want to write that first one?
So there's supposed to be we are.
Yep. We are. We are an all-inclusive and adaptive.
Right. Yeah, like say.
Yeah, you can say our district does, or our district is, or our schools are. Yeah, our facilities. The goal is to be kind of district-wide, so no matter which school we're addressing, we can measure against those.
So, when you mentioned five-year rolling program of assessment, Chris brought up a point that that's a fairly short range amount of time. So, will it just be a revisit of, or will there be long-range goals that would go beyond 5 years?
For the Awesome Grant, we have to show a minimum 5 to 10 year.
Okay.
But the committee,
But only on an assessment type.
for the report for the Awesome Grant,
Yeah.
we're supposed to show a 10 year. But I think the board wants to see this happen every 5 years. So whether or not you go out for a bond every 5 years, you're not eligible for Awesome that frequently. So it's a matter of bringing back or creating a new committee every 5 years to review what has happened, what needs to be on the next bond.
But I think
So-
Chris's point, it's not reinventing the wheel every 5 years, right?
No,
It's taking
it's-
the wheel that was invented this 5 years.
Seeing
and
what
just
needs
seeing
to,
how it needs to
do we need
change.
new treads? Do we need to pump air into it? You still have the wheel. The wheel is still the district. But what you don't get done in the first 5 years, that 10-year plan then says, okay, now these projects are coming due. Let's see if those are the right projects.
Whatever you design has to have the ability to build on, because a lot of things get compartmentalized, boxed, and you're stuck there, and you either have to wash that out and new plan.
Right.
So my point is, whatever we, it needs to be versatile, adaptive, flexible.
Right.
All those terms that if changes in the world, COVID,
Right.
money,
Right.
California secedes.
Exactly.
Has to be adaptive and flexible so that we
Yeah.
can still carry on and take care of our first priority, which is children.
Right. Exactly.
So, I'm just saying, I just don't think we need to put ourselves in a box.
Okay.
We actually need to start thinking bigger picture. That's why I was 25, 30
Yeah.
years. All the what ifs, if they happen, yeah, we can flex and we can go this way. We can be
Right.
adaptive, we can go this way.
I'm just trying to think.
Yeah.
Versus building something that is stuck and it doesn't fit the need anymore.
Right.
And we look back on it, you know, when we're all at our graves going, dang
Yeah.
it, sorry, grandchildren, we suck. And we didn't think about anything beyond 5 years or
And
10 years.
right, and it might be that, the last bond focused really heavily on providing CTE services to schools to bring that industry learning into the education programming. And so how did that do? How did that go? Is there more that needs to be done to build upon that? The South Albany didn't get everything that they wanted, so is there more that we can bring to this bond that says we got the priorities done in that round? What was left on the table? So it's kind of it is that wheel that you're still using the same wheel, you're just making it roll a little bit further down the road. So
But also be able to change the type of tread. Now you're in
Right.
sand, now you're in water, this needs to float.
Right.
Those tires need to be versatile and adaptive.
Right.
Now all of a sudden maybe they have rocket.
now we're hovercraft, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you still have the vehicle. Yeah.
Always assumed it would be another bond that would then go back and cover some of the things that like already made sense to do. But now we can look at it with current eyes and say, well, what was it that we needed something? It may have been different than we thought
Right,
it was.
yeah. And we'll bring some of that up when we go through the facility assessments as well. So we'll go through, every school has its own assessment, and then we'll look at it district-wide and say which schools are in the largest need and which ones don't need that much, like the newer schools that got done. And so that particular piece of each school, we'll start looking at that next week and then the following week as we come up with concepts.
Is there a step in that that looks at the newer facilities to say, here's sort of what we learned? So we built to do this and actually did that, or didn't do that, or we wish we would have done this? Is that part of the evaluation?
That's a good question. We should ask that. What we asked is really how are your facilities working? But we've been trying to get tours of each of the facilities so everybody can see the condition and the comparison between the new schools and the old schools. So that's a great idea.
I mean, the reason I say that, we had this conversation probably 7 years ago, trying to do that very thing. And
Yeah.
we built some new schools. It'd be interesting to see how we actually do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So that we can then do this again. If it worked great, let's do that again. If it didn't, let's do something different.
yeah. Let me bring that, because I know we're trying to schedule some tours of the existing and the new schools to be able to compare and see what worked and what didn't work, so.
Were there guiding principles for a previous iteration of this commercial? And are we going to see those?
We can bring those next time.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Do you remember what those were, Pat?
You know, no, not really. I mean, because this was new.
Yeah,
It was the first time the district had ever really done it at this level.
okay,
It'd always been just a superintendent, assistant superintendent, physical plant director, you know,
Yeah.
figure out how do you keep the roof from leaking.
yeah.
So it really never went into this depth.
Okay.
When a building was designed, you know, well, gosh, we were dealing with buildings that were 40 and 50 years old. So we really didn't have.
And you're still dealing with buildings that are 50 to 70 years
Yeah,
old.
exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, the building itself has got to be, it's got to change with the times.
Right.
Because I know Kim, my wife was a school teacher over in Corvallis, and the school that she was working at was built for open classrooms.
Yeah.
No walls.
Right.
And then they changed,
Yeah.
and now they put walls, so they started putting modulars in
Yeah.
the playground.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then they tore the school down and built a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you don't want to do.
Right. I mean, I mean, for me, I didn't have a computer until I was in my mid-20s. But kids don't even know how to do work without a computer. So it's a very fast-changing technological world.
And just back to the principles, these are for our own use.
Yes.
How much of that will be communicated to the public? Because really, all this work is geared toward the public approving a bond.
Yeah. This is being recorded. Each work session we have will be recorded, and so we will post most of the findings as well after we get our meeting minutes together. So it's a pretty transparent process that we've been working with their communications director on. So.
It seems to me like the principles ought to be something that's good for presenting the bond to the public.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the next one.
Yeah. And most of the time it's like that consensus. You can't really argue with a lot of these.
No.
So it's sort of this all-encompassing thing that it's like, okay, I can get on board with that. So, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris, you wrote a bunch of stuff down.
You did a great job. Pretty good.
So, looking forward to that.
I poured my water and I didn't drink it.
What about other things, playgrounds, working
Which also is counter to like what we want. Like I said, for supervision, day in and day out, you really need to be able to supervise, especially.
How's it going?
Like that sounds
Doing
like a
all right?
nightmare. Like it would be great if you had like an active shooter. I mean, that's great. Hopefully that's not your normal everyday experience. It's actually sad to me that, correct, and it's sad to me we're building buildings for that when it would actually hinder your ability to supervise and make it a day-to-day safe environment. I mean, I get the flip side of it.
So.
There's also where you look at sports, like why football has such a nice field while baseball and softball don't have the same, or why baseball is the part of sports.
To your point, so, and I believe last week,
I mean, unless you're in that situation.
but I go there to have some
So this is
soccer field, walking across it, it looks more like 20 kids in their sections. With broken ankles. Because of all of the
Here at district, there's like 10
So when you look at like, that's what community access is, yes, it would be a great place for community-based programs, whether that's sport,
What do you have?
These are not in any particular order. Okay. Welcoming, safe, valued environment. Providing opportunities for all students to be successful in school and afterwards. Improving student outcomes. Comfortable. I can't read my writing.
Surroundings?
Surroundings and technology that's up to date. And improved climate, I'm not talking about physical climate,
Right.
but rather emotional climate.
Culture is a good word.
Culture, that's a better word. And in the district to attract the best talent.
Very good.
That's our 5.
Okay.
Do we have to sing like this?
No.
We're going to make at least one person come up there and whoever can read your writing is probably the best.
We need a guardrail. It speaks to that.
No, the shorter job.
I mean, we did say you can do that, but you didn't talk about a cost effective and sustainable by maximizing our resources to maintain.
How about cost effective, accessible, and sustainable?
Yeah, it's like, do we need to make this competition? Like, some people's already done this.
How you doing?
Mostly to figure out who developing new facilities. So technology changes.
Yeah, well, we don't have to say that. We can just say.
Oh, these are
Yeah,
examples. You can come up
like,
with your own. Yeah.
We were just like, some of them were put together in ways to kind of like.
Yeah.
By max.
Mr. Face.
We could say to maintain.
Personal just.
To maintain consistency, develop new or design new. I'm concerned about you guys.
Well, we're designing all new facilities. Designing all new facilities. Flexible.
All right. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've got 5 over there.
I think if we make our buildings covertly secure, we're good at it.
Yeah.
We want to bring everybody sure.
Okay.
I can tell you that.
Okay.
Probably,
We do that after they share out.
yeah, after they share them.
Okay.
We are what? 5.
I really don't think we should have a little guidance, like that's not gonna be get bust over the different territories and where it plays out. I'm like, it's a real good building for the future. Yeah, now.
That's part of the problem with AI though.
Hey Lisa, how you doing? Good.
Do you want me to catch you up to speed? So the team is coming up with guiding principles.
Okay.
And so guiding principles are sort of broad statements that can focus on different things. So what they'll end up being is sort of bumper rails for this committee to make decisions based off of, these are a couple of examples, but just, how do we want our schools to be in the future? So our schools are welcoming, safe, and secure because by providing, secure vestibules, or we're focusing
So like
on
safe, positive place.
Right.
Children-centered decision making.
right, and so we're And so it should be the district-wide approach.
Yeah.
But if you look at a specific school, you could say, we're meeting the needs by doing this for this particular school. So it's sort of something you can't really,
Yeah, so because specific schools are serving specific needs and specific interests.
right.
So
But your guiding principles are still something that are broad enough that it still applies to
all
sites. Right.
to all sites.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Got it.
You say 5 minutes?
We got a presenter?
Hmm?
We got a presenter?
Oh, we're telling it. See if you can read the writing, you're presenting.
Yeah.
That's what I said. The gentleman over there. Okay, so 5 minutes.
So they're gonna each come up with their sticky notes and put it on the pad?
Yeah, as they present them, yeah.
What's that?
As they present them, yeah, and then we'll pull one off. We can put it off to the side, or like I left it over there. It'd be great if we could pull them over here on this bench to be able to work on them while they're
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah, we kind of stick them up here.
Not sure who's.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Okay. About 2 more minutes.
More than just brick and mortar.
We're a community for life.
So much
There was so many different aspects of the buy that we just didn't get here.
How do I put that in?
I feel like that almost has to.
You gotta know what
Like,
But would it save and equitable people?
I'm gonna let people come here.
So do you have accessible now? No, they're accessible, right?
Our schools are safe and equitable spaces designed for efficiency.
All right, we got 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
ChatGPT right there. Do we need to auto-post it? We're stick it up high.
We're going to stick them up, and then we're going to find some commonalities.
Okay.
Yep.
So, are you just practicing your handwriting tonight?
As long as you can read it, that's fine.
Yeah, we have to hang
You
it
don't
up.
want me to write it, trust me.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to, but you're doing a really nice job.
I type a lot.
Yeah. They don't have to be able to read it from a distance as long as you're presenting it, and then we're gonna present it at the end. As common, when we find some commonalities.
I was surprised where they tried to make us write italics in third, fourth.
All right, time's up. All right, do we have a group who would like to go first? All right, come on up. Bring your Post-its. If you can put it on one of these boards and talk through them so we know what. Bring them all up. It's okay. These are very, very open-ended, so that's okay. Okay. Yeah, and just read them as you go through.
Hi. Hi, Chris Reese. We're an all-inclusive, all-adaptive organization. That's one of them.
Working. Do we have tape? We're getting tape. We've got tape in the box. I'll hold it for now.
Okay. We consider ourselves an economic driver producing productive members of our society. We are sustainable beyond 10 years. I think we need to be thinking well beyond 10, even though the bond's 5 to 10 or whatever. I think we need to be thinking sustainable for at least the 10 to cover our basis, but we need to be thinking 20, 25 out minimum. We're able to mold, flex, adapt, change to whatever comes our way. So think of all the worst case scenario things that could happen, and I think we need to build to suit the needs of whatever happens. We need to be adaptable. So we're able to grow with the demand, the needs, and the desires of our community. So we need to listen and make sure that we can meet that demand and grow with those needs. And then we're going to design, build, and advocate for technological requirements that meet children of all ages and abilities where they are to help teachers meet personal educational goals. So I think technology is something we need to consider so that our out-of-control ratios in our classrooms can maybe be met with some technological advances in the classroom so that every child, no matter where they are in their educational mountain climbing, right, they can still meet their goals, whatever those are, based on their abilities. So not holding people back, not keeping people from reaching their full potential. So technology could potentially help with that. A small portion of that budget should go to that. That's what we have.
Great, thank you. Okay.
All right, who's next?
Here we go.
Come over here.
You got a blank board on this one? Let's see the tape.
So we're concept people.
I like it.
Okay, so we're not, I don't wanna give us away, but we thought things like improving student outcomes was a good idea.
Right.
Okay, you want this up here? Yeah. We want to provide opportunities for all students to be successful in school and afterwards. We want to make sure that students have that everybody has comfortable surroundings and that our technology is up to date. We want to improve student culture and in the district to attract the best talent. And we want our spaces to be welcoming, safe, and provide a valued environment.
Excellent.
That's it.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who's next?
We didn't get to the point of actually making them sound pretty. But a principle around all buildings providing an equal quality space for all students. Building for the future. And facilities that represent the value our community has for our children, which inspire learning and show that they're important. And thoughtful spaces, both indoor and outdoor, that serve the schools and community.
Okay. Thank you. Who's next?
We are a district that is focused on clear and transparent communication that promotes collaboration within the community. We are focused on equitable outcomes for all learners while future-proofing all of our improvements. We are good stewards of taxpayers' dollars by maximizing our resources and adding value to our existing facilities. And we are a district that values safety and security in all of its forms, and I didn't finish writing it, but that was mental, physical, and whatever needs come up with that, and emotional, so.
All right, thank you.
Who do we got left?
Okay, we actually really like this one. So design an equitable learning environment where all students feel welcome, safe, supported, and empowered. So that's kind of where we started. And then our schools are adaptable to the needs of the students and the community, encouraging learning for their future. Our schools are also designed for the diverse learning and styles of the students and the community, sustainable for the future. And we kind of ended this one with, our schools are safe, adaptable, equitable spaces designed for efficiency, long-term sustainability, and accessibility.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Do you have any more? One else?
That was.
Did we get them all? Okay. All right. What we're gonna do while you guys take a break, we got about a 10-minute break. We're gonna start looking through all of these, and I heard a lot about safety and security. I heard technology, and then welcoming and equitable was a very popular word as well. So there's a lot of commonalities that we can all kind of agree on. So it's good. Thank you. Yep. Oh, picture time. Everybody, before we leave for break, before you get cookie crumbs on your sweaters, we want a picture of everybody. So come on over here.
you. I thought I was loud, but.
This is for a recording.
Oh, okay. Oops. Okay. Can people hear me better?
No, it's for the recording. So
Oh.
it's not a microphone.
Okay. Okay, even better. So we are from Piper Sandler, which is an investment bank that is actually headquartered in Minneapolis. However, we both work in the Portland office, and personally, I have worked with the school district on every bond you have sold and successfully passed since 1996. So have a lot of loyalty to you guys, particularly because you get groups together like this. I mean, wow. First meeting looks great. Thank you all for coming. What Amy asked us to do is talk generally about bonds, operating under the assumption that maybe this is not stuff that's commonly known. So I always like starting with raw definitions under the assumption that you know nothing. Hopefully I'm not insulting anybody. And I will spend some time going over kind of the basics. And then Brendan is going to walk you through some of the base case analyses we've been running for Andy and Jane, looking at different amounts and what the implications might be for your citizens and your taxpayers. So, starting with the basics, and by the way, we do have color copies that we brought of the presentation, and at the end, we have our contact information, and if you'd like one sent to you electronically, we're happy to share. So, anyway, what is a bond? Well, a bond is just a fancy name for a loan. It's just like a loan you might get for buying a house, but in most cases, it's for a much, much bigger amount. Because it's for a much, much bigger amount, you're unlikely to go to a single bank as you would to buy a home, because a single bank, A, might not have $100 million lying around, and B, might not give you the best interest rate on the entire amount. So what a bond does is breaks it into pieces, generally by maturity, where you might sell one maturity to a bank over here, to an insurance company over there, to a corporate portfolio, or to individuals who look at bonds as being another form of investment that tends to be safer than the stock market, thereby diversifying their portfolio. General obligation bonds are just one flavor of bond, and it means that it's secured by property taxes. If you're a city, you might be able to sell a bond secured by, say, water fees that we all have to pay. But a school district basically only has this one option to borrow a significant amount. So, the debt service is repaid by an additional property tax over and above what you're already paying for operations, for paying your teachers, and as such, because people tend to pay their property taxes, because the consequence of not paying them is that the county can come in and foreclose on your home. Investors look at this as being a pretty safe investment. Again, giving investors the opportunity to diversify away from more volatile, risky investments. Interest on general obligation bonds is generally exempt from federal income taxes, and in Oregon is exempt from Oregon income taxes too. So what is the consequence of that? Well, if I told you that the interest you personally received on a bond, portion of that would have to go to the feds and to the state of Oregon in the form of income taxes, versus if I told you this is tax-free, you would be willing, all things being equal, to accept a lower interest rate on the tax-free bond than you would on the taxable bond. This is a long-standing way that the federal government and, frankly, the state of Oregon do a subsidy for school capital improvement projects. GO bonds in Oregon are unique, as they are in every state, because every state's system of taxation is different. But the bottom line is that we have two property tax limitation measures that you may have heard of, Measure 5 and Measure 50, that limit how much in taxes you pay for operations. GO bonds are exempt from both of those measures. So the main goal or the main hurdle that you have to get over, given that you're levying an additional tax, is you have to go to the voters and you have to get them to say yes. So it's not an unfettered opportunity, but it is a powerful one because it's not subject to what we call compression of taxes. There are limits on how much you can ask for under Oregon law, but frankly, the limit is very generous, and it's unheard of to see a school district get there. For example, your limit is set, and the pointer doesn't work, but that's okay, set at 7.95% of the market value of all property within the boundaries of Greater Albany. $1.1 billion. Lots and lots of room to get yourself in trouble if you want to try it. My guess is the taxes would be so high on the full amount of authorization that your voters are, let's just say, somewhat unlikely to say yes. When you go to the voters, you have to craft a ballot title. The ballot title has to be approved by the board, and it is due to the county roughly 2.5 months prior to the election. I have a calendar in a couple of slides, but basically, rule of thumb for a November election, the ballot title itself has to be filed in mid-August. For a May election, it has to be filed in mid-February. That ballot title has to have all of the details about how much you're borrowing, how long you're borrowing it for, and a reasonably detailed description of how you're going to use the money. So backing up from there, if the board has to approve it, you really, for say a November election, have to have all of your decisions made by say June, yeah? And for a May election, December. So you can start to see why you're not starting too early, because all of these decisions are related and they're complicated. So kudos to you for getting started this early. State law does limit how you can use the money you get from bonds, but again, it's a fairly liberal set of restrictions. Rule of thumb basically is that you can spend bond proceeds on any tangible item that has a useful life of 1 year or more, as long as it's not routine maintenance. So, can you spend money on new buildings? Yeah, I hope they last more than a year. Can you, at the other extreme, spend money on pencils? I do have some pencils that have lasted me for more than a year, but I would suggest that is pushing the envelope. In the middle, could you spend money on school buses? Absolutely. Can you spend it on roof replacement? Yes. Can you spend it on technology? Yes. There is one constraint which says that you cannot borrow on average for longer than the average useful life of what you're financing. So if all you were financing were laptop computers, in that case, you probably shouldn't be doing a borrowing for longer than a year or two, right? However, if you're financing technology and roof replacement and a brand new building that is likely going to last, how old are your buildings, Sandy? 50, 60, 100 years? Okay? You average that, and it's quite normal to see a 20, 25, or even 30-year school bond. By the way, if you have questions as I go, don't hesitate. Interest earnings of late have actually been appreciable as short-term investment rates, despite the Fed's best efforts to lower them, have remained fairly high. That's in contrast to where we were 3 or 4 years ago, where you could earn basically nothing. The good news is that any interest you earn up to your borrowing rate can be used on projects. Do you want to count on that? I would say no, because you may have a 3 to 5 year drawdown schedule, and who knows where interest rates are going. So it is helpful as a contingency, but I wouldn't count on it in advance. These are, as I said before, tax exempt both at the state level and at the federal level, and therefore the feds have a whole host of rules and regulations that you have to comply with when you sell tax exempt bonds. Starting at the top, use of proceeds. This is in addition to the state rules. You have to use it essentially on public purpose projects. For school districts, that's pretty easy. Where you might get into some level of complexity is if you are doing some kind of partnership, often with nonprofits. Say you want to finance a building for Head Start or some other child care enterprise that is not a local government provider. That's when, Andy, if you're thinking about something like that, that's when you want to get the lawyers involved early, because there may be ways to avoid selling a portion taxably, but you want to plan ahead. In most cases, what you are planning on doing should be clearly tax exempt. can you spend money today in anticipation of the bond passing and reimburse yourself later? The answer is yes, you can, but the board has to pass what's called a reimbursement resolution pretty soon. I would, in fact, Andy and Jane say it's not too early to get such a resolution before your board if you have any thought of spending money in advance that you want to reimburse yourself for. Yeah.
Question. How have voters perceived that in the past?
I have not heard that that's a problem. Because, of course, if the bond doesn't pass, then the school district is out the money. There are standard things that are exempt from reimbursement resolutions. So, for example, architecture fees, planning fees, things like that, engineering. But if, for example, you identified a piece of land that was a perfect site for a facility and you didn't have time to wait for the bond to pass, that would be a classic case of where you might front the money, reimburse yourself, but if you don't pass the resolution, you won't be allowed to.
But we would also have the option to purchase land without a plan to put it in a bond.
Correct. And you could keep it open. You could pass the reimbursement resolution, which is permissive. Sorry.
What did you repeat what you just said, please? So we have, I had a question already about what land does the district have. So we have some parcels, right, that, you know, we have to think about it like planting a tree. 20 years ago is the best time, right? So we always have to be moving and thinking about that. So there's no requirement that if we were to buy land, that we would have to put it in the bond.
And as I was about to say, no, thank you for clarifying the question. It's permissive, so you could get the reimbursement resolution, buy the land, which gives you the permission to reimburse yourself, but it's not mandatory. Any other questions on that?
I just had one. We just did
Yeah.
a public safety levy for the city.
Yeah.
Because once the ballot title is submitted, so staff cannot participate in any of the campaigning, correct?
That is correct.
So it's up to the board to go out and do the sale.
Correct.
And the conversation.
Correct. How much time do you have to spend the money once you've borrowed it? Well, there is no time limit directly, but the way the feds get you is they say that when the district does the borrowing, Andy or Jane will have to sign a certificate saying they have an expectation of spending 85% of the proceeds within 3 years. Now, it's not an absolute test. If you sign it and you don't spend the money within 3 years, there are some investment consequences. It's not like they're going to come and take the money away. But when you're dealing with the attorneys who help you through the borrowing, they will ask you for a cash flow that shows that you have a reasonable expectation that you can spend 85% within 3 years. If you can't in good faith sign that document, they will say, okay, you're going to have to split the bond into multiple sales so that you can feel good about signing such a document for whatever amount you borrow. It is not unusual for school districts to sell their bonds all at once. I think on the last bond, Albany did split it.
It was because of the 85% test.
Right.
A small amount had to be carved out and was sold in
Right. Mine like a steel trap, this guy. There is this funky rule called 15C212. It is a Securities and Exchange Commission rule that basically requires the district to provide annual financial information to a central repository. So similar to what you see in the private sector as well. Okay, I always like to, particularly with groups like this, because you are going to be on the front lines of talking to your neighbors. I always like to spend a little bit of time talking about bond levy math, because it's very straightforward and often people describe it incorrectly. So I'm going to try and share how easy it is, and then hopefully no one here will say absolute statements that arguably you shouldn't be saying. So let's talk about it. Debt service, meaning principal and interest, is known at the date of the sale. Just like with your mortgage, once we sell the bonds for you, we can print out a fixed interest rate payment schedule that provides you exact numbers from day one to your final maturity. When Jane is putting together her levy request to the county, what she does is she takes that amount and then she grosses it up for potential delinquencies. Most people in Oregon pay their taxes, as I said before, but sometimes people pay late. So you are not on the hook as a school district to take out of your operating budget any shortfall. You're allowed to increase your levy by a certain amount. Usually 5% of the levy is standard, because once you've collected it, it can only be used for debt service. So Jane takes the amount, she grosses it up by delinquencies, and she submits that number to the county. The county then takes your property value, in this case something called the assessed value of property within the district, which by the way is different than your market value. And when you all get home tonight, you could pull out your own property tax statement and see there's something called assessed value, which is the value you're taxed on, and your market value is likely substantially bigger than that. That is one of the property tax limitation measures that was approved in the 90s. So the county knows what the assessed value for the entire district is, and he takes that amount, he adds it up, and he divides. Okay, so numerator is what do you owe? Denominator is what is the amount of the tax base that you're spreading it against. You get a bond levy rate. Brendan is going to be talking about levy rates, and one of the analyses we've run is what if we take your existing levy rate and calculate what you might be able to raise if you continue it into the future. But here's the problem with making any kind of definitive statement about this number. This number is known, it's fixed. This number is not known. It changes every year. we have a system of property taxation that makes it pretty regular, but it's not a given that what we estimate is going to be what you experience. So let me give you an example. Let's say the debt service on your bond issue is $950,000. We add 5% for delinquencies. That's a cool $1 million that's submitted to the county. The county adds up all of the property within the district and comes to the conclusion that the total assessed value is $1 billion. To get a levy rate, we do it per thousand. So what you do is you take $1 million divided by $1 billion divided by 1,000. That's $1 per thousand. What does that mean in English? It means if you have a property with an assessed value of $300,000, that's $300 per year. Okay, everybody with me so far? Okay, all right, let's say next year the assessed value goes to $2 billion. There's huge building going on in the district and your assessed value doubles. I guarantee we have not estimated that your assessed value is going to double. But what happens to the levy rate? Thank you. So in that case, if you went to your neighbors and said, we estimate that your levy rate is going to stay the same, and please use the word estimate. But even if you say that, you'd be wrong because we don't know what's going to happen to the assessed value. And this is a happy story, right? Okay, but what happens if there's, Cascadia subduction, half the value goes away. So now rather than $1 billion, your assessed value is only $500 million. What happens then? It doubles. So if you take away one message from me tonight, it's that when you talk about this levy, forget about making absolute statements. You want to say it is estimated. You cannot say your taxes won't go up, even if we estimate that the levy, in my example, is going to stay at $1. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, cool.
So, I do.
Yes.
I think that was a learning moment for me in that typically in our area, our assessed values have gone up year over year. So are you telling me then our levy rate has been going down every year to follow that? That Lynn County has been accurately computing that amount, charging us less per year?
So it depends on how we've structured the debt service. If we structured the debt service to be $1 million each and every year, if your assessed value goes up, then your levy rate is going to go down. And I think in actuality, your levy rate has been going down because the growth we assumed was nowhere near as high as the actual growth. So, Andy, were you?
Yeah, and to your point, I think the ballot title in 2017 was 235, and it has declined around 221. Right, so, but I think in the old days it could decline further because Carroll didn't structure it to hold it a little bit better. That would be fair, right? Because I remember in North Sandiana it was just almost nothing.
Right, right. I'm almost done with my part. As I said, this is an election calendar. If you're focused on the May 26th election, The filing deadline, the first filing deadline, you actually have to file it twice, is February 27th. The final filing deadline is March 19th, and do note, as we are all used to, we are a vote by mail exclusive state. So to a degree, that means that the May 19th date for purposes of getting out the vote is kind of irrelevant. What you want to focus on is when the county first mails the ballots. This is what's on the state Secretary of State's website. Each county is different, so you want to find out from Lynn County and from Benton County when they're going to mail the ballots. Similarly, if you're looking at November of 26, actually, I think we were talking November of 26 and May of 27, so the dates are slightly different. But if you're looking at November 3rd, 2026, filing deadline is August 14th. Ballots go out October 14th. Okay. Amy mentioned the AWESOME program. AWESOME stands for Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching Program, and it is an awesome program. So I appreciate the clever naming. Unfortunately, it's not big enough in my opinion, but it has definitely helped school districts get bonds passed. So here's how it works. The state provides up to a matching grant of $12 million, minimum of 6, maximum of 12. It is inflated by CPI every year. Albany, for the 25-27 biennium, is eligible for right down the middle, about $8 million. All you have to do to get that money from the state is get your voters to say yes. So it is the type of good story that, depending on how you think your voters will react, you may want to put directly in the ballot title. If voters approve this measure, we will get an $8.1 million grant from the state. You can only spend it on what's in the ballot title, and they will let you know in advance of the election so you can market it. So specifically,
I do have a couple questions.
Yeah.
on that one. So if the districts ahead of us, 1 through 115, don't pass their bonds, does it bump our number up so that we could get more than 8 million?
no.
Oh, dang. Okay. I was trying. Yeah.
So I was skipping over this. They have a formula by which they allocate the grant. It is not an absolute guarantee that any school district that passes a bond gets the grant, because it is an application process, and it all comes down to how much is the state setting aside and how many districts apply for a grant. Now, being at 116 means you're a little past the halfway point, because there are 197 school districts. So arguably that might not feel really good, but 2 points may make you feel better. First of all, you're not competing against 196 other school districts. You're competing against the school districts that are going on that election. So they may all be ranked below you, and you would come in first and automatically get a grant. The second thing is they don't award the entire amount based on rank. They set aside 33%, I think it is now, 40%. I think I think they changed it. I think it's now 2/3, 1/3. They set aside a significant portion for a lottery so that those who are at the bottom still have a decent chance of getting money. The good news is that in the past 5 years, every school district that passed got money. So I feel like your odds are quite good. Also, the timing of this application, if you go on a May ballot, you have to file the application by December 15th. Remember that the ballot title for a May ballot isn't due till February. So they will let you know well in advance whether you absolutely got a grant or are you on the waiting list, and if so, how high? I have seen districts take waiting list positions and still put that in the ballot title because that too can be a compelling ask. Now, I'm not naive. If you are going for $100+ million, $8 million may not sound like a lot to your voters. But for some voters, it may be enough to push them if you say, next time around, we're going to have to ask for 108 plus inflation because this is a one-shot deal. So, anyway, yeah.
Historically, have ballots been more successful in May or November, or is there no connection with that?
So we have statistics that are statewide statistics that I think give the slight edge to May. But I would argue that that's pretty misleading, and it really comes back to the old saying, all politics are local. The difference between election dates is much more relevant based on turnout and whether the folks who turn out are folks who are helpful. So as a general rule, even year elections, that would be May of 26, November of 26, have higher turnout. In the Portland metro area, they love even year November elections. They love it. They swear by it. They plan their lives around it. Why? Because it's young people who come out for November elections. They tend to vote favorably on school issues. Other parts of the state, this one, I'd be less certain, and I think, your group will likely be working with campaign consultants who can go down to the county and find out who votes in different elections. Sometimes going for a low turnout election, like a May of 27, is a good strategy. So also in the all politics is local, it's worthwhile to find out what your overlapping jurisdictions are doing. Ideally, I would think you wouldn't want to be on the same ballot as the city. Although I have had some people say that sometimes being on the same ballot as another jurisdiction, and by the way, the city of Albany is also a client, so I'm not saying anything bad about them. But sometimes having competition works to the advantage of the school district. So you just want to be aware and try and work with your overlapping jurisdictions to make it best for all of you. Anyway, I am going to turn it over to Brendan, who's going to talk about the good stuff. Oh, yes.
Recorder.
Yeah.
I've been on council 7 years, and that's the best explanation of the boundaries.
Thank you.
Let's see. All right, so we can get this on. Okay, so I'm here to talk a little bit of numbers, if you didn't get enough with Carol's example. So bonds, we talked a little bit about property values, property taxes, but the other big component of bonds is interest rates. What are you actually borrowing at? And historically, we've seen interest rates move down quite a bit. If we go all the way, if this graph, yeah, that's right, the pointer is working. If this graph went back to, let's say, 86 or 76, you would see a much more steep decline. Some of you, I am not quite old enough for that memory, but I'm not gonna out my boss here. But some people might have memory going back to much higher mortgage rate environment of the early 80s. The district, when it last borrowed bonds, was so 17 and 20, actually timed pretty well. That's not a recommendation to try and time the market. There's a kind of a, I would say, vivid or maybe dark sort of comparison to catching a falling knife. If anyone has ever tried to do that, is a terrible idea. I don't recommend it. So trying to time the market is not what you guys should be thinking about trying to do. Trying to time an election is probably more valuable, but trying to catch interest rates at the trough is really not what you're here to do. But just giving you a look back, what we've seen is interest rates have kind of come back, bounced up. A lot of that has been driven by that downward pressure was, if anyone knows the term quantitative easing, anyone remember that going on? So that was a lot of Fed pressure to get interest rates down. Since we've seen inflation come back in, there was a hot button issue through the last election cycles. We've seen interest rates come back up. Now we're seeing kind of competing pressures on interest rates. We have Fed getting pressure to lower rates. Again, they don't control all of them. They really only control the shortest duration of the interest rate environment. But that does trickle through and affect these longer term rates. And what we're looking at here are 20-year duration rates for both treasuries, which is the gray bar here, and those are a taxable interest rate, and then the blue bar is what's known as the AAA MMD, and that's representative of tax-exempt interest rates. So like Carol was saying earlier, the district gets to borrow on a tax-exempt basis. I am not familiar with a school district that's done GO bonds taxably. It is very uncommon. So you can really just look at that blue bar as kind of your proxy for what interest rates would look like for you guys. And generally speaking, they do track each other. You do see little moments where they diverge. This right here, this was when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt during the financial crisis. This right here, that was COVID when it first hit. But still, generally speaking, you are talking about two interest rates that are going to track each other very closely. So if you want to go home and kind of see like what are their rates going to be looking like, and you can just look at the 20-year treasury or 10-year treasury bond and just kind of follow that along if you want to play along at home. And before anyone asks, because we get this question quite a bit, we do not know where they're going. If we did, I'd be worth a lot more money and I'd be sitting on a beach. Yeah. Probably at least 2 Porsches in the garage, minimum. So the other part of general obligation bonds, we've already talked about this quite a bit, is property values. So Carol talked about the different types of property values, and you're going to see 4 different columns here, but really I'm going to focus on just these 2 columns here. So this first one, M5 real market value, this is functionally the estimate from both Lynn and Benton County assessors for what the sale price would be if every resident of Greater Albany Public Schools were to just put their real estate on the market, what the county assessors think it's worth. Almost $14 billion. That is quite a bit. By example, 2017, when you guys last sold bonds, $6 billion. Real market values in your guys' neck of the woods have gone up quite a bit. That is not entirely uncommon. We've seen a lot of the state, especially coming out of, and by the way, property values on here kind of lag what you're maybe seeing in the real world, so to speak. So you see these negative growth rates here in 2010, 11, 12, 13. that's the 2008 housing crisis working its way through the system. There's this lag effect, but what we're seeing coming out of it, this is not uncommon. And if you go to places like Bend, you'll see bigger negatives here and even higher growth coming out of it there. But you guys have done quite well, especially the last few years compared to even like the Portland metro area, which is not seeing the most robust growth the last couple of years in real market value. But if you recall, that's not what your bonds are taxed against. Your bonds are taxed against assessed value. So you'll see two different measures of assessed value here. You have total and net. Net assessed value is just taking that total and subtracting out the value of urban renewal. Now, City of Albany, they have an urban renewal agency, CARA. CARA's, yeah, thank you. And so there is some value there. But if I recall correctly, the type of plan that it is does not deduct from the bond rate. And so you guys are able to tax against the total assessed value. And so the total assessed value for the district as of fiscal 25, and we're going to be getting the fiscal 26 probably in 7 days, almost $8 billion, $7.75 billion. And the important difference between real market value and assessed value is, well, actually there's two key important differences. One, assessed value cannot be greater than real market value. So we like to see as big a gap as possible. The bigger the gap is between the two, that means assessed value can grow more steadily. And assessed value is not limited to 3% growth, but without new construction, without new development, it really is limited to just 3% growth at most. And so anytime you see AV growth greater than 3%, that's new development. That's new construction, that's new houses, that's new businesses being built. And so you guys have seen really strong and steady growth above and beyond 3%. And that's going back to the question about why you guys have seen your bond levy rates go from a projected 235 when the voters said yes in, I think it was November 2016 election, or maybe it was May 17. And why they've steadily declined now to about 220. And that has been because that assessed value growth has been above and beyond 3%. And I, as the person who worked on those bonds and helped structure them, we used a 3% growth rate. That's what we were trying to target when we were structuring the debt. We were trying to hit 235, assuming 3% growth. So anytime you see above that, you're going to see the slight, slow decline over the life of the bonds. And ideally, like, that's kind of what you want to see. Question?
So quick question. So my guess, 2007, that was like the peak of that housing bubble where everybody's houses were worth a whole lot of money.
Oh yeah.
Right? Obviously that wasn't true, but 2023, why was there 18.3%? Why does it go so high? Like, I can't remember what was going on in 23 that would have.
So that's a good question. I would have to actually talk to the Lynn and Benton County assessors. Sometimes there can be one new development, but there can also be some weird things going on. I mean, I don't want to imply anything nefarious, but you've seen this in other counties where maybe a good old boys network where maybe some properties were kept a little low value, new assessor came in, they said, hey, that ranch or that parcel's worth a lot more. That's probably not going to explain why you saw a $2 billion jump from 22 to 23. More than likely, it is, yeah, it's just,
And also we're building a lot of homes too.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, you guys have built a ton, so,
Well, and you can get a 2.5% mortgage, so you're willing to pay more for a house.
yeah. That's actually a great point too.
2020.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's,
So interest rates low, I can buy more house.
you can buy more house, yeah, yeah.
One other point that I think it's important to emphasize, in a global way, but particularly in the residential market, assessed values are running somewhere between 50 and 60%
Yeah.
of market value. So in my example where I said $1 per thousand on a $300,000 home is $300 a year. When you talk to your neighbors, make sure to explain
Yeah.
to them that they shouldn't be doing mental math on how much their home is worth, chances are it's gonna be closer to half of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
They're looking at
again,
real market, Zillow versus Zillow.
Yeah, people look on Zillow, they check their estimate, they're like, what the heck? Well, I can't afford that. And it's like, you're paying on half of that.
But that's just gonna go up exponentially. If you have an assessed value that's going up by 3%, but your actual market value is going up by 4.7, it's just gonna continue spreading apart. So you see it down at 2007.
Yeah.
It's not twice as much. It's just
Yeah, and that's part of it is what you're describing is when this system was put into place in the 90s, that ratio was much tighter. And I don't think, was it 90? They set at 90%, yeah. And so it has just been growing since then. And as Carol was saying, like for residential, and this is true for your guys' community and most communities across the state, residential is largely about half. Now, if you look at industrial, a lot of places that's more like 3/4. Actually, industrial is probably closer to 95%. A lot of commercial, you're going to be seeing more like 3/4% value of AV to RMV, or that ratio. So it's different depending on the different property classes. And so your guys' community, depending on that ratio, you can see a sort of a different mix of what's kind of affecting, your overall tax base. But looking here from just that RMV and AV for 2025, you guys probably aren't entirely disconnected from what most communities across the state of Oregon are seeing, which is, pretty good mix of residential, and most of that residential is sitting at about 50%. Now, of course, if a new home gets built or any new property gets built, it comes in at and I don't want to get too in the weeds here, it comes in at this like change property ratio. And so depending on that particular property class, what that ratio is for that class at that point in time, that's what it comes in at. So you kind of, even with new development coming in, it's going to come in at that gap. So it doesn't come in, a new home won't come in at 90% of RMV to AV, it's going to come in at 50% still. Yeah, do you have any more questions on this or move forward? So this is just a snapshot of your guys' existing debt. So yeah, it was May 17. So right now you guys have 2 GO bonds outstanding, but they're both from the same authorization. That was in May 17. And my memory was good enough that, so when the district sold the debt in 17, they weren't able to confidently tell the bond attorneys that, hey, we expect to be able to spend at least 85% of these bond proceeds within 3 years. So we'll sell as much as we can, keep the rest in, keep that powder dry, sell that remaining when we need it. Thankfully, had about $7.5 million, and they're able to slide it right in as that AV kept growing, the bond levy rate declined from 235. They're able to layer that 2020 bond right on top and still keep it below that projected levy rate. Now, again, because that levy rate is a projection, the voters don't actually approve it. You're not actually obligated to come in below that levy rate. It's still probably not a good idea politically, though, just to, break fidelity with the voters and just flippantly, go to whatever levy rate you feel like you can do. But still, that was a nice situation for the district. So here is, gosh, I probably should have not looked back quite so far because this table is very small to read. But this is historically what the district's bond debt service has been compared to its net AV and what that's equated to in terms of the actual levy rate that was assessed against its taxpayers, and then what I'm projecting going forward. You can see that 3% growth is what we are projecting. Now, you'll see a 97.5% collection rate assumption. That is greater than what Carol said with that sort of 5%. Well, that's me just saying, well, you also get some back taxes collected each year. So it's really, when you actually equate that in there, it ends up being closer to like 99%. But we still don't want to be that aggressive because Carol and I like to underpromise and overdeliver with everything that we do, and that includes with forecasting on collection rates. And so this year, you guys, your taxpayers, or I should say last year, your taxpayers paid $216, and we're projecting that to stay about the same for the next few years. And then there is, and I'm going to skip right to it because I like pictures and I like the colors. You can see we're staying constant about that 216, 217 rate, and then there's been this planned levy step. Now that was always there. That was a strategic decision by the district when it sold the 2017 bonds to the voters, that it was always going to have this levy step with the idea that this way we can come back and layer in, gosh, I keep stepping on the thing, layer in new debt for new capital projects. And that way you're not effectively blocking yourself out from going back to the voters without having to ask for a levy rate increase. This is a common strategy, a levy step strategy for a lot of districts. I know a lot of the Portland area districts, they follow the same sort of methodology with their debt service structure, keeping an idea for like, okay, well, we maybe want to be going back out to the voters for, I don't know, every 8 years, or every 10 years, or every 12 years, whatever election cycle they feel works best for them. Like Carol said, a lot of Portland area districts in particular like that sort of even year election cycle, whether it's November or May. But then you also have other districts who are agnostic to that, and they feel confident they can still get it passed in whatever election cycle, and are more just trying to fit whatever sort of capital replacement plan they have in place. It really kind of depends on what works best for you guys. Question?
Could you explain the nuance in the, I think we all understand what the 2017 bonds are. I don't recall a district going out and the 2020, that was bonds that had not been sold.
Exactly. So
2017.
Exactly. So in May of 2017, the total authorization was really more like 159 million. But because when those bonds were sold, the district was only able to confidently tell the bond attorneys, we can only spend 85% of that 151 million, not 159 million. So we got to keep some of it, you know, in reserve. The nice thing is when you get approval from the voters, that approval doesn't go away. It goes into perpetuity. So they could have sold it. You can still keep that now if they didn't sell it in 2020, it'd still be available. But in 2020, they came back to us and said, hey, levy rate's gone down enough. We have some additional needs. We think we can do it. And it's pretty common because it's not a coincidence that these are 3 years apart, because that is the test. And so it's not uncommon for districts or any local government to intentionally structure it such that, all right, we know we're going to ask for, let's say, 200 million, but we think we can only spend 100 million the first 3 years. Okay, well then structure it such that in year 4, levy steps down, like something like this, and then you put in the remainder right there.
So that wiggle room is only in that 15% of mandatory expenditure in the first 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other question, and I know this is a little bit off the track, but when, how, and maybe more importantly, or how is more important, does the term premium come in? I mean,
Ooh, good question.
You came and explained it to us last time, but and I still don't understand.
You know, before we go down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I'm mindful of the fact that it's 8:20 and
Oh yeah, we're already getting there.
and I'm happy
That's-
to stay over.
Yeah, I would say that's Bonds 201. Like that is.
I'm actually doing this.
No. Oh, I've never had anyone say that before.
But why don't we
yeah.
go to the
Yeah.
estimates, and then if you want to hang later.
So we ran four different scenarios for Andy and Jane, and they're just very simple. Just all right. Well, what could the district raise if we did 220 levy, 225, 230, 235? Now, there's a lot of numbers on here and everything, but really, I think the biggest takeaway is, all right, 220, which is roughly a continuation of what the taxpayers are paying right now, all the way up to 235, which is what was on the ballot in May of 2017. Now, there's no magic to those numbers necessarily, other than, well, they're kind of tied to something that the voters, or taxpayers have seen before, but really any number can be chosen. And roughly what we're seeing, and by the way, this does not scale linearly, so you can't use this rule of thumb for the district's debt all the way up to like $5 or all the way down to 50 cents, but roughly a nickel change is worth about $6 million. I wish it was 5 to 5, it'd be a little easier, but a nickel is worth about $6 million. So as you go up from 220 in the current rate environment, projecting about 168 million in borrowing capacity, all the way up to 235, which is just under 185 million in borrowing capacity. Now these all assume a 20-year borrowing, which keeps consistent with the district's last debt. As Carol said earlier, when you start talking about new facilities construction, you're not really limited now by the weighted average useful life of what you're financing. It's more just, well, what do you feel comfortable with going? And it's not uncommon to see 20 all the way up to 30-year debt for school district, large capital projects. But I will say 20 is still the norm, I would say. And,
And the main difference, it's just like the
yeah.
decision you make when you decide between a 15-year and a 30-year mortgage. Your annual expense on a 15-year mortgage will be higher, but your overall expense on a 30-year mortgage will be much higher still. And the same thing happens with the bond issue.
Yeah.
So we can certainly run all kinds of what-if scenarios, and likely will over the course of the next few months. But this is a pretty good baseline.
Yeah. And then, again, because we like graphs, those got kind of shifted up. Shoot. Well, these little bars here should actually be down here. But so what I've done is just taken the graph for the first scenario, which is a 220 bond levy for the about 168 million. You can see we layer it in right there. Carol likes to use the term subway tiles. I grew up playing video games, so I like to think of it as Tetris. And instead of blocks falling down, blocks come in horizontally, and we just fit them all in together. And you can just picture these being a little lower instead, but just little nickel roughly increases for the the other three borrowing scenarios. I didn't want to put them all, the graphs together, because frankly they're kind of boring comparing them to each other. It's just very incremental steps up. The bigger change is really in the borrowing amount that those different levy rates allow for the district. So we also looked at some comps for you guys. Oh, yeah.
Go back to the last slide. So that assumes that, so we still have a bond falling off then 10 years from 27.
Yeah, falls off in 37.
Okay. So how you have put that all together keeps the rate for 20 years.
Projects to keep the rate. Yeah. Sorry, we are sticklers about that.
Okay, so the question would be that I have is, if we're thinking about long term, how do we get to a spot 10 years from now where we will have other needs, different needs?
So
you guys have just made an assumption that we would keep the whole rate rather than have a drop in the rate 10 years from now. Because we have an opportunity that is benefited to us by the people that served in 2017.
Correct.
And I think historically, Greater Albany had looked at much shorter term debt. So the issue in 1996, if I remember correctly, was a 10-year issue.
Yeah.
Which didn't raise a lot of money, but did have the advantage of giving you another bite at the apple in 10 years. The 2017 was kind of a hybrid, where we said, going with a 10-year issue is not going to generate sufficient proceeds that it's worth it. So rather, how about if we do a 20-year bond and build that step down?
To your point, or to your question, if anyone's already thinking, it was like, well, what does that mean then for these scenarios? So if you were to come in here and let's say, all right, let's build, shoot, I don't know if that's supposed to happen.
That was cool.
Yeah, I did not mean to do that. But if you were to carve out these bonds right here to create a new step, what happens is that par amount goes down. Now, I can't tell you off the top of my head what it will do, but it will be a material drop in the amount of proceeds you'd be able to raise for projects. Now, that might be a trade-off that's worth making, but that's a strategic decision for this group to make and for the board, not for Carol and I. But it's absolutely, yeah, a strategy.
It's important that you have those
Yes.
conversations because it is absolutely the case that those who are able to go to their voters and say, we don't estimate that the levy rate will increase, have much higher success ratios than those who are looking at an absolute tax rate
Yeah.
increase. 20 years is a long time to wait, but you have to balance that, as
Yeah.
Brendan said, about how much you need to
Yeah.
tackle the projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Question? Oh, no. So now we looked at some comps for you guys. This is a list of largely local or kind of neighboring districts, but we also sorted this list to keep it so we're not looking at the really tiny school districts. So keeping it in mind that we're looking at districts that are greater than 1,000 ADMW, or basic fancy way of saying greater than 1,000 enrollment. If we were to expand this statewide and look at all other districts that are like more of your size, where you're about 10,000 enrollment, you guys would probably be even a little lower on the list as opposed to yeah, because you'd be comparing yourself against like the Weston Wilsonvilles, Tiger Tualatons, Portland, Beaverton, yeah.
Cresswell,
Yeah.
Gladstone, all of whom, so your combined levy rate,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see this, is $6.75 per thousand, which includes $4.58 for operations and $2.16 for the bond. First of all, you don't have a local option tax.
Yeah.
So compared to, say, Eugene that does, or Portland that has a higher local
Yeah.
option, you can see vast differentials, but there are many
Yeah.
districts in the state that are over $9.
Yeah.
So depending on what's helpful, we can certainly show comparisons to different sets
Yeah.
of districts.
And then here's just a graph.
So that was 2027 you're talking about for this particular levy, correct?
Oh, this is this year's levy. Oh, yeah, it would not hit till actually 2028.
So May of 28?
Yeah.
Well, no, the election.
Oh,
would be
sorry, yeah.
November of 26 or May
Yeah.
of 27.
Yeah.
It would hit in the 27-28
Yeah.
tax year.
Yeah. And then here's that same list, but only comparing the various bond rates. Here's where you guys stack up. But again, if we were to compare you guys statewide to districts that are of similar size, your guys' bond rate would probably land much more towards the middle. Like, as I'm thinking, like Sherwood, they're like 350 about. Lake Oswego just approved up to 285. Gladstone's over $4. Yeah, Weston Wilsonville's $3. So, yeah. But yeah, that's our slides. And there's our contact info if you guys want to bug. Yeah, absolutely.
It's really hard to read in this, and I'm not gonna remember everything.
Send you the PDF of the
That'd be great.
presentation after each meeting.
Oh,
and it's
perfect.
on our webpage too, so I'll send it to you.
Excellent, thank you.
And look, it's right in
Oh, why?
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
Great meeting.
Anything to close?
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you guys
Questions?
so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And the Yankees, 9-6.
Hitting the room right.
Yeah.
Before we leave, we want to have one last thing. We have what we call the ticket to exit, and so what we were doing earlier in the hallway was compiling everyone's guiding principles. And so on the table you have a strip of docs. So we'd like you to go and